What happened to the Hebrews in ancient Egypt? There were never any Hebrews in ancient Egypt. The Bible made it all up. There is only one reference to Israel in ancient Egyptian history up to the 9th century BCE. It appears in the victory stele of Pharaoh Merneptah. The stele says, "Israel is laid waste. Its seed is no more." There is nothing about Israelites being slaves in Egypt and being forced to build anything. There is nothing about 10 deadly plagues being inflicted on Egypt because of the God of the Hebrews. There is nothing about the firstborn of Egypt being wiped out, an event that would of course be carved into ancient Egypt and the collective Egyptian psyche if it actually happened. It didn't. There is nothing about any exodus of Hebrews. There is nothing about any Pharaoh and his army being drowned in the Red Sea while pursuing the fleeing Hebrews. The whole thing was literally invented. So what actually happened? The Hebrews were a nomadic people who lived in the region of Canaan. The decisive events of the Exodus actually relate to heretical Egyptians, not to enslaved Hebrews. Egypt underwent a religious revolution when monotheism appeared in its midst. It wasn't the Hebrews who were proclaiming monotheism, but none other than the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten. Pagan polytheistic Egypt was in uproar. The powerful priests of the pagan gods were constantly plotting against Akhenaten and begging their gods to smite him. Akhenaten tried to suppress them. The country was in a state of near civil war. Akhenaten relocated the Egyptian capital to his brand new city of Akhenaten, meaning horizon of the Aten sun disk. This once grand city was built in a few years, and also abandoned within a few years, meaning that those that lived there had to go on an exodus. They had to pack up and abandon their homes and go find a new land. Why? Because Akhenaten died and his new monotheistic religion failed. Egypt went back to how it was before Akhenaten. But that doesn't mean that a significant number of Egyptians hadn't become faithful monotheists. They knew they were no longer welcome in polytheistic Egypt. They would certainly be persecuted, so they had to leave. They had to escape Pharaoh, meaning the pharaohs who once again rejected monotheism. There was another reason why the people of the city of Akhenaten had to escape: famine and plague. Akhenaten is today called Amarna, and excavations have shown that many adolescents died there. Research on their remains shows that they were malnourished and diseased. Did they perhaps believe that God was punishing Egypt for failing to fully embrace monotheism? Plague broke out during Akhenaten's own life. The plague took the lives of 3 of his daughters. Did this later mutate into the idea that the firstborn of Egypt died, including that of Pharaoh himself? After the fall of Akhenaten's monotheism, his most loyal followers had to exit Egypt. They were terrified of being hunted down by Pharaoh as heretics. They were led by charismatic follower of Akhenaten, an Egyptian prince called Thutmose, who has come to be known as Moses. Moses had to suppress a rebellion among his own followers when some wanted to go back to polytheism and return to Egypt. Eventually, the Egyptians encountered the nomadic Hebrews and formed an alliance. The Egyptians had carried with them an ark, which they claimed linked them to their monotheistic god, Aten. This became central to the Hebrews. They named it the Ark of the Covenant, and they protected it in a mobile temple called the Tabernacle. For many years, the Egyptians and Hebrews wandered around until they decided to settle by attacking Canaan and establishing the state of Israel. The Ark of the Covenant ended up in the city of Jerusalem, in the holy temple of King Solomon. So, you see, the Hebrew monotheism of Israel actually originated with the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten. It was his followers, not the Hebrews, who became refugees and had to embark on an exodus from Egypt and roam around before finding a new home. The 10 plagues and the exodus were actually memories of events that happened in Egypt during the turmoil of Akhenaten's tumultuous reign, when Akhenaten no doubt blamed all the disasters on the failure of Egypt to truly accept the monotheistic God. All of this was rewritten as Hebrew history, not Egyptian history. In fact, the Egyptians, such was their hatred of Akhenaten, erased the memory of that diabolical pharaoh from their history and acted as if he had never existed. Wikipedia says, with Akhenaten's death, the Aten cult he had founded fell out of favor, at first gradually, and then with decisive finality. Tutankhaten changed his name to Tutankhamun in year 2 of his reign, c. 1332 BC, and abandoned the city of Akhenaten. Their successors then attempted to erase Akhenaten and his family from the historical record. During the reign of Horemheb, the last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty and the first pharaoh after Akhenaten, who was not related to Akhenaten's family, Egyptians started to destroy temples to the Aten and reuse the building blocks in new construction projects, including in temples for the newly restored god Amun. Seti I also ordered that Akhenaten, Smenkhkare, Neferneferuaten, Tutankhamun, and I be excised from official lists of pharaohs to make it appear that Amenhotep III was immediately succeeded by Horemheb. The negative attitudes toward Akhenaten were illustrated by, for example, inscriptions in the tomb of scribe Mose or Mes, where Akhenaten's reign is referred to as the time of the enemy of Akhenaten. The Hebrews inherited the story of Akhenaten and made it their own story. They themselves became the enemy denounced by Egypt, even though they were actually never in Egypt. Isn't it amazing how much the establishment has lied to you? The Bible is total fiction. Well, not total. It has roots in actual events, but events that had nothing to do with the Hebrews, but instead concerned a bitter and apocalyptic period in Egyptian history, when Egypt was shaken to its core by the abrupt appearance of monotheism, leading to social and religious convulsions. Isn't it time the world told the truth about the Bible? But when a book of lies becomes embedded, the truth will never prevail against it.